There are certain things in this world you can count on with absolute certainty. The sun rises in the east, the calendar moves forward whether you are ready or not, and James Harden, somewhere in the month of May, will produce a postseason performance so spectacularly insufficient that it defies reasonable explanation from a player of his regular season caliber. You can set your watch to it. You can plan your schedule around it. It is as reliable and as predictable as anything the NBA postseason has to offer, and it arrived right on schedule once again. The Cleveland Cavaliers dropped another tight game to the Detroit Pistons last night, and now find themselves in an 0-2 series hole. Another close game, another clutch time failure. Another evening where the basketball universe watched and wondered how a team with this much regular season success is struggling to execute when the margin for error has collapsed to nothing. And after the game, James Harden stood at the podium and offered his thoughts on what the Cavaliers need to clean up moving forward. He talked about offensive rebounds. He talked about limiting turnovers. He talked about rebounding the basketball and giving themselves extra chances to score. He said the margin of error is small and the corrections are manageable. He is not wrong about any of that in the abstract. Those are real basketball corrections that real basketball teams make between games in a playoff series. The problem, the fundamental and glaring problem sitting at the center of everything Harden said at that podium, is that the most obvious and most urgent correction available to the Cleveland Cavaliers is the one he did not mention. 0 points, 1 assist, 1 turnover. In the entire fourth quarter from James Harden in a game the Cavaliers needed to win on the road to avoid falling into the exact 0-2 hole they are now sitting in. 0 points in the fourth quarter of a playoff game where your team needed you. Think about that number and what it means for a player of Harden's profile, a player who has earned more than $401 million in NBA salary across his career, not counting the $42 million cap hit he carries into next year. A player who has won a league MVP award, a player who has jumped to 5 different teams since leaving Oklahoma City, hand-picking his destinations and the rosters he wanted to play alongside. 0 points in the fourth quarter when the game was there to be won. And his explanation? He said he was just missing shots. He said in the second half he took 2 shots, but the ball was moving and his team was generating better looks. He said he was picking and choosing his spots and figuring out what works and what does not work for the betterment of the team. He wants you to focus on the ball movement. He wants you to focus on the team concept. He wants you to look past the 2 field goal attempts in an entire second half of a playoff game and see the bigger picture of a system operating correctly. But here is where the numbers become impossible to wave away with post-game framing and references to ball movement. This was Harden's 182nd career postseason game, 182, and it was the 46th time in those 182 games that he has had the same number of turnovers as field goals made, or more turnovers than field goals made. 46 times out of 182. That is 25% of his playoff appearances. Roughly every 4 games, James Harden delivers one of these performances, and he has done it in multiple consecutive games right now in this series against Detroit. But wait, there is more. Last night, Harden shot 3 of 13 from the field, 3 of 13, and that is now the 20th time in his postseason career that he has shot 25% or below from the field in a game where he attempted 10 or more field goals. The 20th time. And here is the number that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. That is an all-time NBA record. The tracking data on that particular statistic goes back to 1954, well before the ABA-NBA merger in 1976, well before the modern era of basketball, back to a time when the game was played at a pace and with a style that bears almost no resemblance to what we watch today. And across all of that history, across every player who has ever dribbled a basketball in a professional playoff game since 1954, James Harden now holds the record for the most games shooting 25% or below on 10 or more attempts, 20 times. All-time record, his alone, and it does not stop there. Last night was also the 36th time in his career postseason that he has made 3 field goals or fewer in a game. 36 times out of 182 postseason appearances. That is 20% of his career playoff games, 1 in every 5. This is not a slump. This is not a rough stretch born from bad matchups or unlucky bounces. This is a pattern so consistent, so statistically established across nearly 2 decades of postseason basketball that calling it a pattern undersells it. It is a defining characteristic. It is a documented feature of how James Harden performs when May arrives and the games carry maximum consequence. He said after the game that he would not read too much into his performance last night moving forward into the rest of the series. He is feeling good. The shots will fall. The system is working. Trust the process, trust the ball movement, trust that the player who averaged spectacular regular season numbers will eventually show up in the moments that define careers and championships. He has been saying versions of this for years. And the postseason record, 182 games deep, has been answering him with the same response every time. Now let's be direct about what this means for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because this is not just a James Harden story. This is a Cleveland Cavaliers series situation that is becoming genuinely alarming. Teams that fall into a 0-2 hole in an NBA playoff series go on to win that series at an extraordinarily low rate historically. Throughout all rounds in NBA history, when a home team wins game 1 and then wins game 2, that team goes on to win the series approximately 95 to 96% of the time. Those are not odds that leave a lot of room for optimism. If you have home court advantage, the reasonable assumption is that you are the better team. And if you are the better team and you go up 2-0, winning 4 of the next 5 games against an opponent that has shown it can beat you is an extremely high bar to clear. The Cavaliers were on the road for both of these losses, and they have not won a single road game yet this postseason. That is a fact. They have also not lost a single home game, which means the series pattern so far is entirely predictable based on location. The road team has won 0 games. The home team has won every game. And as the familiar observation goes, a playoff series does not truly start until the road team wins or the home team loses, depending on how you want to frame it. But here is the problem with leaning on that framework as a source of comfort for Cleveland. The Cavaliers do not have home court advantage in this series against Detroit. That means they will have to win at least 1 game on the road to advance. They have not done it yet. And last night was an opportunity to do it in a game they were squarely positioned to win in clutch time before their highest paid and most experienced offensive creator contributed 0 points and 1 turnover in the game's most critical quarter. The question of what comes next for James Harden is now unavoidable, because this postseason performance exists against the backdrop of a very specific contractual reality. Harden has a 1-year, $42 million player option he can activate this summer. However, only $13 million of that $42 million is fully guaranteed. That distinction matters enormously when you are trying to understand what Harden's immediate future in Cleveland looks like. The Cavaliers just traded for him a few months ago at the deadline, which would suggest they had plans to build around his presence. But what exactly have they been building around? What is the version of James Harden that arrived at the deadline versus the version that has shown up in this postseason? Harden will almost certainly want more than a 1-year option. He will want guaranteed years. He will want another substantial contract. He has earned approximately $401 million in NBA salary across his career, and including the $42 million next year option, that figure approaches $450 million. Somehow, that number remains insufficient motivation for consistent playoff performance. Somehow, the player with the league MVP who has accumulated that kind of generational wealth from professional basketball continues to produce these postseason performances with a regularity that has now given him an all-time NBA record in the wrong category. His career postseason biography reads as a case study in regular season brilliance failing to translate to playoff reliability at the decisive moments. The one NBA Finals appearance on his resume came in Oklahoma City way back when he was 20 or 21 years old, playing as the 6th man on a team built around Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. That is the last time James Harden played basketball into June. That is the only Finals appearance in a career that spans more than 15 years and has now seen him suit up for 7 different franchises: Oklahoma City, Houston, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, the Los Angeles Clippers, and now Cleveland. 5 different teams since leaving OKC, as he has repeatedly handpicked his destinations and the rosters surrounding him, looking for the combination that finally produces a championship run in the month of June. The combination has not worked, the June basketball has not come, and the pattern of regular season excellence followed by postseason disappearance in the critical moments has remained the constant through every roster change, every city, every fresh start. The regular season version of James Harden remains one of the most statistically productive players the NBA has seen in the modern era. The postseason version, specifically the version that shows up when games are close and fourth quarters need winning, has produced the all-time record for most games shooting 25% or below on 10-plus attempts, a 25% rate of games with more turnovers than made field goals, and 3 made field goals or fewer in 20% of his career postseason appearances. Those numbers do not lie. They do not care about ball movement narratives or clutch time process explanations. They are the ledger of a career, and they tell a specific story that 182 postseason games have now written into permanent record. Cleveland is staring at a 0-2 deficit in a series where they do not have home court advantage, where they have not won a single road game this postseason, and where their most experienced offensive creator is in the middle of another historically bad stretch of playoff basketball at exactly the wrong time. The math of a team needing to win 4 out of the next 5 games while having demonstrated an inability to win on the road is not encouraging. The math of those series outcomes historically, where the 2-0 team wins 95 to 96% of the time, is not encouraging. And the math of James Harden's postseason record, 182 games of documentation, is not encouraging. What is encouraging is that the Cavaliers have not lost a home game yet. What is encouraging is that the series is still theoretically recoverable, even if the historical probability says otherwise. What is encouraging is that basketball games are played on courts, not on spreadsheets, and the outcome of any individual game can surprise the statistical models surrounding it. But encouragement requires something to build it on. It requires a reason to believe that the next game will look different from the first 2. And right now, the most urgent reason the Cavaliers need for Game 3 to look different is sitting in whatever hotel room James Harden occupies tonight, processing what happened and what his team needs from him in the games that remain. 0 points and 1 turnover in a fourth quarter is not picking and choosing spots. It is not finding the right balance between aggressiveness and team play. It is the absence of the player the Cavaliers traded for and the player his contract demands he be when the game is on the line in May. He has been here before. He has been in this moment, in this type of series, with this type of pressure, with this type of stakes. 182 times he has been in a postseason game, and the record of what those games have looked like when they matter most is documented, quantified, and now historic in ways that carry no positive connotation. The system, as he calls it, is producing the same output it always has in the postseason, and the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 0-2 because of it. Tell me what you think in the comments. Can Cleveland come back from 0-2 without home court advantage? And is this postseason the moment that finally forces a real conversation about what James Harden's postseason record actually means for his legacy? Make sure you like and subscribe, because this series is far from over, even if the history says otherwise, and it is going to get very interesting very fast.